I'm Stephen Pryor. I serve as Secretary of Housing for the state of Rhode Island. I'm pleased to be joined by Eileen Hayes, Executive Director of Amos House, and by Lieutenant Colonel David Lamont of the National Guard, marvelous partners in the Armory, the shelter operation, that is to say the warming center that de facto serves as a shelter at that location. I want to start with gratitude. I want to start with gratitude to Eileen and David and their teams for over the last 5+ months doing terrific work to ensure that there is a location that can be found by individuals experiencing homelessness in Rhode Island where there's shelter and there are referrals to services. And I want to thank Eileen and David and their teams for extraordinary work. It really has been invaluable. What I want to talk to you about today is the ramping down of the Armory and the ramping up of new locations and services. So let's start with the Armory itself. The Armory will complete its service by Monday, May 15th. Complete its service for the purpose of serving as this warming center. Our goal is to reduce numbers by enabling individuals to find other alternatives by Monday, May 8th, and the goal is to reduce to the number of 100 individuals at the Armory by then. But the date for wrapping up altogether is that Monday, May 15th. There's work that needs to be done over these couple weeks to get there, and we're very grateful again to Eileen and the entire Amos House team and to the entire National Guard team, including the Lieutenant Colonel, for the work that's occurring. Now, a few notations. We have been aiming for this ramp down, and we want to ensure that we would do so responsibly, providing alternatives within the existing system for individuals experiencing homelessness and providing for some new alternatives. That's why this has taken a little bit of time. We are very grateful to the West End community that has continued to serve as host to this operation at the Armory, and we're grateful for their patience as we get there with the requisite locations and services that will enable us to responsibly ramp down. We're also grateful to city officials and others who have been helpful in this process. Now, just another reminder, the State Housing Department weeks ago put out some solicitations to providers to ensure that there were homeless service providers who could step up their operations to accommodate some more Rhode Islanders. In addition, we put out a solicitation to ask for properties where there might be alternative locations. In some instances, the providers themselves help to find the properties or were able to expand within their existing physical plant or reactivate a location that they were keeping in their portfolio, whatever the case may be. So that is some of the work that's been done. So we're very grateful to the constellation of homeless service providers in this state who have been stepping up time and time and time again. There has been a significant increase in homelessness in Rhode Island, and this hard work has been necessary. And again, we are very grateful. As to the alternatives and opportunities that are emerging for individuals experiencing homelessness, for individuals who are currently staying at the Armory, I want to make a few specific points. I did want to say as a preface to these points that more details will be available over the course of these couple weeks and beyond. The point today is not to provide a directory of specific locations, but it's to share out with you where we are in our process and to talk about some of the locations that are emerging, many of them being places that either are currently homeless service providers centers already or are being reactivated for this purpose. So Let me explain these alternatives and opportunities by starting with this. Clients at the Armory, that is to say, the Rhode Islanders who are staying at the Armory, are being provided referrals routinely through the existing system. Now, our numbers are down from around 200 to around 150 every night, in part because of these referrals and because of some of the new opportunities that have come online, some of the new sites that have come online, also because individuals are making their own choices. So the numbers are down to about 150. We're encouraged by that, and we're going to continue working at it. That means that, with thanks to Amos House, there are continuing consultations with these individual clients regarding the alternatives that they're seeking. Folks are being entered into the coordinated entry system database if they haven't already been in CES, and alternatives are being found. So there is some limited additional capacity in the system as it stands. So these consultations continue as we ramp up the new centers and alternative locations that I'm describing. Important point, many places throughout the Northeast, and for that matter around the country, do not aim to do as much around shelter and center strength after the winter has passed, if they're a four-season location. So speaking of the Northeast, we actually contacted other jurisdictions in the Northeast, and they see a dip in shelter strength after the winter, because a lot of what is being done supplemental to the existing shelter system is for the purpose of saving lives by enabling folks to come in from out of the cold. What we're aiming to do is to mitigate those losses of beds that are common among our northeastern peer states, because there has been an increase in homelessness here. By the way, there has been in a lot of parts of the Northeast and the country. We're aiming to mitigate the loss of beds, and we're especially conscious of the fact that the Armory is ramping down. So we want to create these new alternatives. Part of the process that we've undertaken is to extend the centers that served as warming stations in an extraordinary step. We haven't done this before, certainly not at this scale. So there are approximately 200 beds that were served by the warming stations. We've extended them. So those are 200 beds that are coming back online or are staying online. That's part of our plan as we implement it. These include Emmanuel House, supported by Catholic Charities in Providence, Community Care Alliance, or CCA, in Northern Rhode Island, Crossroads, Rhode Island in Providence, that's their Hartford Avenue location, Open Doors in Pawtucket, that's the Main Street location, and Warm in Westerly, among others. They had warming centers. They're extending them to create approximately 200 beds of new capacity, or of continued capacity. That is happening, again, contrary to the past custom, not only in Rhode Island, but across the Northeast. In addition, we are adding capacity. We believe that in the coming weeks, as we enter May and progress through May, we will be able to offer around 100 beds. We are aiming to ramp up to 100 beds in the course of May. And could this extend it to June? Yes, it could. It could. But our goal is to ramp up to 100 beds as we ramp down the Armory and beyond that time period of the ramp down. I want to describe to you some of the locations that are crystallizing as the sites for additional bed capacity for Rhode Islanders experiencing homelessness, inclusive of and with a focus on individuals at the Armory. There is additional capacity that Crossroads, Rhode Island is ramping up in Providence. That's CCA, the Community Care Alliance, is ramping up in Northern Rhode Island. For medical respite purposes in particular, in Providence, there's the coalition of individuals who are working together, of professional organizations working together, the West Bay Community Action Program, Episcopal Diocese in Providence, and the Coalition to End Homelessness for medical respite purposes. And fourth of this series of four that I'm mentioning, Emmanuel House, supported by Catholic Charities in Providence. The distinction from the list that I read previously, these are not extensions of warming centers. These are new beds in one form or another by these providers. It is true that many of these providers are in both categories. All this information is in the press release that you possess, but I wanted to explain that these two things are happening simultaneously, those warming center extensions and the new beds. A couple of additional notations before I close and take questions. I spoke of this briefly earlier in the comments, but working with Eileen and Amos House, we are in dialogue with the continuum of care, which helps to govern the system of coordinated entry and in that sense, the overall shelter and center system. We are in dialogue with them about additional ways to ensure that folks at the Armory who have no place else to go are able to, on a timely basis, find opportunities, both pre-existing and new. And there are meetings and consultations that are occurring, including next week. So perhaps to return to where I started, you've now heard the solidified plan for ramping down the Armory. The reason for these 2 weeks of additional ramp down is that you hear described service providers who've stepped up, who are setting up shop or expanding their setup for these purposes. In some instances, they need time to do that. In addition, you've heard that we're continuing our dialogue with the continuum of care, including meetings that are happening during these 2 weeks to get the system in shape for all of these purposes. In the context of the Northeast, where ordinarily there's in fact a dip in strength commonly, that's the custom, we're proud of the fact that we are stepping up as we are ramping down the Armory. Those conclude my comments, and together with Eileen and David, I'm here to answer questions.
Two questions. First,
Yes.
So I think I'm hearing you say you will have this capacity for as many as 250 people?
It should be noted, Stephen, that in these other parts of the state that I described where the warming centers are being extended, there's additional demand from Rhode Islanders experiencing homelessness. So what I would say is that we can't give you that exact figure, but there is expanded capacity, and we need to do more. I want to add this. During these 2 weeks and beyond, we need to do more. There are sites that we are still exploring through consultation with cities and towns and through work with the service providers, and we need to move towards the provision of more permanent supportive housing. So the conversation is not as focused on shelter beds and more on permanent options.
And at the top of your release, it talks about grants.
Yes.
How much are we talking about here, and who's getting it?
We'll get you that figure. We'll get you that figure. That is the grant process that I described, where I said that there's a solicitation that was issued to providers and they're responding. We'll get you the figure on the dollars.
And it's a given that these places that you've enumerated, they're going to be receiving these grants?
Yes, and more. These places and more. There are more options in the works, some quite advanced in the process of starting them up or standing them up, and some earlier in the process, and it will take beyond this time period of these couple weeks.
Secretary, you have a second page to this press release that says not for public release.
Yeah, right.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Oh, that may be just an error.
Okay, so all of this,
It's in our hands.
I mean,
Could you look at that,
Q&A,
Hannah?
not for press release.
oh.
Capacity available from pre-existing. No,
Ken is going to cross
do
it
mine.
off everybody's sheet.
All right.
I can't wait for another release, okay?
A second question, just to follow up. You mentioned Tuckett and the Open Doors location. They sent a release out to reporters today saying
I'm sorry. Can I?
Here,
Do you want to?
gotta work with something, you know?
If that last page is not for public release, I think it was not. It may not have been intended for circulation. I'm not sure. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's not correct, so.
The
gotta have
location in Kentucky that's run by Open Doors, they reached out to reporters today and they said they're almost at full capacity. So are you saying that from today going forward, they're adding more to what
Yes,
they have?
I am. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, new folks are not being accepted starting this Monday, and that's with ripping that sense.
Eileen, do you want to speak to the approach to who's being accepted and when?
Sure. So we have also continually, every single day, placed people both in assisted living, other shelter beds, and when they get vouchers, helping them find housing. So we will continue that process as we've been doing. We have agreed to the mayor's request that we don't take in new people. What I've said is we're happy to do that because we're telling people they have to find an alternative. What we did say, though, is if we have an emergency situation like we had the other night when a 69-year-old woman who did not know who she was showed up at the Armory at 10 o'clock, we took her in and we're working with her. So we will make case-by-case decisions, but for the most part, we're trying to instruct folks to call CES, to get on the list for shelter, and find alternatives, because we don't want them to come in and then not have any place to go when we have to close.
Arlene,
That was a request from the mayor? that
The mayor
Armory
and the
got?
state both have asked us to stop taking new intakes.
How are you enforcing that? Like, walking around the Armory grounds, it's pretty open. I mean, there's that big gate people kind of walk in.
Well, people have to when they come into the front desk
So is there
to
like
check.
a check-in
Yes,
deadline on Monday?
there's a
Like,
check.
if you're
No.
not-
When people come in, they have to be screened every single day, whether they've been there since the very beginning or tomorrow they just come in for the first time. If they're new to us, they would have to meet with the staff person to do an intake. At that point, we're going to help them find an alternative.
So you won't take them in, you'll just do...
We'll find we'll call CES with them. We will send them to wherever we think they might
won't
be able
stand
to go.
in.
Eileen, how doable, how workable is all of this? I mean,
It's heartbreaking, honestly.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. We are feeling very sad and overwhelmed, and we also, as I've said repeatedly, the Armory is not the place for folks to be sheltered. It's not a shelter. It was really a place to keep people alive. I wish that we had more alternatives, and I feel like we have an incredible team right now trying around the clock to find alternatives. This problem has been in existence for many, many years. We saw this coming. We have a 54% increase in homelessness in the last couple of years. We're in terrible, terrible shape, mostly because we don't have permanent housing. And we're spending so much time trying to solve the immediate problem of homelessness that we're simultaneously sort of looking at permanent housing, but that takes 3 to 5 years to build. So what we've been saying for the last 4 or 5 years, and specifically in the last 2 years, we need a transitional shelter plan for 3 to 5 years to keep people alive and safe while we build permanent supportive housing.
Colonel, understanding that the Guard is a can-do kind of agency, what's your assessment of all of this? And I need you to step up.
Yes. So, at this time, we are here to support the people of the state of Rhode Island. We are here to support the requests of the governor, and we feel that this is a very important mission, and we are very proud of what we've done at this point.
Forgive me, I'm not on the ground there. Are your people involved beyond the Armory? In
No.
any of these other locales?
No.
Strictly at the Armory?
Strictly at the Armory.
Secretary,
And
can you
is that
talk
the
about-
intention, is you're going to phase out as the Armory phases out?
As the request of the governor and the state. But yes.
Secretary, can you talk about 1144 Eddy Street? That
Yes.
seems to be a seriously considered spot. There's
Yes.
a community meeting happening in May. What's going on there?
That is one of the sites that's under exploration. That decision has not been made. There certainly are no contracts or anything of that kind. We're still evaluating the feasibility of that site, and we're still consulting with the community and with elected leaders.
Is that the same for Motel 6 in Warwick? I also heard about that.
Well, it should be noted that Motel 6 in Warwick operates already
Okay.
with a subset of folks who are experiencing homelessness. There's a dialogue with a whole number of service providers about whether more can be done. So again, we'll offer specific updates on precisely what's occurring as the finalization of those plans comes together.
And correct me if I didn't hear you, May 15th, that is the last time we're extending the Armory, or is there a chance that this goes to June?
No,
July?
that's the last time. It's very important that in order to accomplish that, we all continue to rally, meaning that city and town officials, the service providers, and the state working together, that's the plan.
Secretary, the mayor's
Yes.
office did indicate to the Globe that they absolutely did not support the extension of the Armory for another 2 weeks. When was the last time that you spoke to the city to talk about this extension? Why did you make this decision?
We've been speaking with them on a continuous basis, the mayor and his representatives in City Hall in Providence, including today. And one of the reasons that we are here today is to express that we're on the same page. We're on the same page. We're grateful. We're working in a synchronized way to carry out what we just described.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Gonna get that
Appreciate your coming on a Friday, and have a good weekend as well.